Welcome to the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, today in just 5 minutes, we're talking about what investors can expect this year in small cap stocks. We better start, though, with the basics. How do we actually define a small cap? And can you give me kind of some examples?
Well, a small cap is generally considered a listed company with a smaller market capitalisation, maybe a few $1 billion or less, depending on the investor, but probably outside the top 50 or outside the top 100. Covers lots of companies, smaller retailers, travel companies, plenty of miners and tech companies in that group. We're about to talk to Matthew Kidman, Principal of Centennial Asset Management, about it. Remember, this is general information only, and you should always seek professional advice before making investment decisions. Matthew, what is it about small caps that make them so interesting for investors?
Well, as you just mentioned then, Sean, it's a broad church. We get to look at everything. We're generalists. It goes right across the board, and nothing's too big to fail. Nothing is an established franchise. They're not like your banks that you talk about regularly, or a BHP that's got 100-year assets. They're businesses trying to grow, trying to establish themselves, some more than others. As you said, there's companies like a Flight Centre that's been around for a long time, and it's one of Australia's leading retailers, but most of them are evolving.
Okay, so what sectors do you think we should be watching over the next 12 months or so in that space?
Yeah, it's very broad, and we've had two fairly average years. The backdrop's terrible. Interest rates started to go up in early 2022. A lot of the small caps copped the brunt of it in Australia. So we had that tech sell-off in the US, but in Australia it was more a liquidity bear market. The less liquidity you had, the more you got sold off, and that's what happened. And the small caps were down a lot in 22. Flat, we may as well not have turned up in 23. They went nowhere. It was quite deflating. So overall, I think most things are forgotten, friendless. We've all got bored with small caps. That means they're cheaper. So I'm not going to narrow down into any sector. I think there's stocks right across the board that are quite interesting.
Okay, what about some stocks that you like then? If we're not going sectors, what about a few stocks you like?
Well, when I say I'm not going any sectors, I'm just saying most of them are cheap. So, or maybe I can go into sectors. You've twisted my arm. I think probably the ones that aren't as cheap, which is a big part of the sector, is retail, because they've got to kick along recently because it wasn't as bad as what we thought. But if you go a bit further along, there are some smaller retailers that have forgotten, which are a big part of it. There is a number of manufacturing companies. There is tech companies that have been forgotten in that 2022 sell-off. There is definitely some finance, non-bank finance companies that are cheap, and even some mining services companies that I would put in. So that's what I meant. Right across the board, you can pick and choose stocks, and that's why we think that this year, 2024, is going to be a big comeback year for small caps.
Okay, big comeback year. The risk-reward scenario, keep it in mind. Any stocks, though, specifically, Matthew, that you like at the moment?
Yeah, there's lots of stocks. If you go to that non-bank finance sector, if you have a look at it, there's a number of companies that have just been forgotten, especially in the mortgage market, something that we all would be related to in some form or another. We've looked at in the past. There's companies like Resimac that have gone to below 1 times book. What's book? It's just their loan book. What's it worth mark to market? They've been the victim of a very aggressive big bank sector, and they've gone below that level. They're very good managers, and margins, I think, will come back over the course of the year as the banks behave themselves. So something like that. Another one in that sector is a stock that we like is AFG, Australian Finance Group, which does a bit of its own lending, but it's mainly a broker network. And if you think that something's going to work this year, I think what the market will be looking at, what will be the big stimulus was everyone by back end of 2024 was saying we're entering a housing boom in 2025 because of the shortage in housing. So I think that's a really interesting place. If you go over to Western Australia, where most of the mining services companies are, we still like things, companies like SRG Engineering, plenty of work. There's infrastructure work still going on. I know governments are scaling them back, but there's quite a bit of work. And the mining sector, prices might be down, but volume extracted from the ground keeps going up, and that's what you get from mining services. So there's a sprinkling of companies right across the country.
Okay, Matthew, one final question. Couple of shocking years for small caps. What's going to happen this year, though? Have you got a prediction?
Yeah, it's a broad index, but I think small caps can do a return of 20 to 25% in calendar year 24. It'll be a big comeback year.
Whoa. There you go, Matthew. Thanks for being part of Fear and Greed Summer.
Thanks, Sean.
That was Matthew Kidman, Principal of Centennial Asset Management. Now, Michael, we are not an investing podcast. Always chase some professional advice before we're making any investment decisions. But Matthew Kidman's 20 to 25% prediction for small caps, not bad.
How about that? Bringing it home with a massive prediction for this year. We'll be keeping a very close eye on this, and we'll be touching base with Matthew throughout the year. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thanks, Michael.
That's it for today. Make sure you hit follow on the podcast. A new episode every day and regular business news back from January 15. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed.